What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto learned flying Raijin? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. A girl dropped her ball on the dusty streets of Konoha. It dribbled past all the pedestrians and shop owners, and landed at a blonde boy's feet. He picked it up with a sheepish smile, wondering, will I find a friend today? Look, it's that boy, a woman whispered loudly. Another woman shivered. He gives me the creeps, she remarks. The boy looked to the girl. He wanted to pass the ball back to her. But the girl's father yanked her arm away and warned, don't play with him. Hearing that, the boy bit his lip and ran away. Just another day in Konohagakure. He wanted to tell them, I have a name. It's Naruto, y'all, no, but it'd be all for naught. The adults would merely glare and ignore him. Finally, when Naruto couldn't run anymore, he stopped and gasped for air near a ramen stand. He overheard Leaf Ninja inside exclaim, what flavor? It tastes amazing, as they heartily slurped in the noodles and sharply exhaled, satisfied. Naruto's stomach growled, so he fished out some leftover coins from his pockets. He's wanted to try the noodles, let alone the soup and broth, ever since the stand opened. Anything other than the mushrooms he foraged and the occasional fish he's lucky enough to catch in the small creeks outside the village. The old man stopped by a week ago to give him that money. He hoped it was enough. Naruto counted out 3 small silver coins and 5 coppers and sighed. It's not enough. Most of his allowance went to new shoes that week. And the week before he had to buy new clothes, as his old shirts and shorts were too tight and raggedy. He tried earlier in the day to see the old man to get more money. But the ninja guarding his office always turned the boy away. The old man's important, they'd say, the whole village is his family, he has to take care of them all. But the boy didn't understand that. All the other kids had their own mothers and fathers. What do they need the old man for? Everyone else woke up to home-cooked meals for breakfast, and were tucked in every night by someone. He cried to the old man not long ago, why don't I get a mother and father? The old man sighed, and started the same story he always told the boy. The demon fox came, and many innocent children were left orphans. But the boy didn't want to hear that story again. And he didn't want to live without parents or friends. The old man rubbed the temples of his head, and relented. He'll find the boy someone to play with him. It's been a week since then, and no one the boy matched up with lasted longer than an afternoon. He's too loud and unruly, they'd say, or they'd just call him a troublesome boy. But the mentors expected Naruto to be grateful, that he should be humbled that they'd spend time with him at all. If Naruto so much as protested, they'd label him a problem child and leave. Yet, all the boy really wanted was someone to be happy for who he was. Now, his belly grumbled. The boy sighed, and pocketed his loose change. He gave one last mournful look at the savory bowls of ramen in the stand. The slices of char siu pork glistened in the savory broth, the golden strands of noodles seemed endless, and the boy knew he'd eat it all up if given the chance. He grumbled, what he'd give for just one bowl, and he'd never ask for another. Suddenly, a voice broke out behind him and happily said, it looks good, doesn't it? Naruto turned around. He saw a wide nose at first, and then 2 black eyes. It was a Leaf Ninja, the headband shined across his forehead, and he had short, unkempt, and black hair. The shinobi wore a high-collared, dark outfit with a sword strapped to his back. The ninja smiled a toothy grin. Do you want a bowl? He suddenly asked. The boy was surprised. No one outside ever talked to him directly, let alone offer him anything. He shook his head, and stood still, nervous. Well, I'm not that hungry. I just want a taste, the ninja said. He scratched his nose, it's a shame, all that food will get thrown out. That's wasteful, the boy suddenly exclaimed. The ninja laughed, I guess so. If only I had someone to give the rest to. Give it to me, the boy demanded. I dunno, the ninja teased, how do I know you won't finish it? It's a big bowl, after all. I can finish it, just watch, the boy declared. The ninja smirked, we'll see about that. And the 2 entered the stand. Once inside, a few of the other customers glared at Naruto. But the ninja glared back, if they had a problem then they'll have to deal with him. The customers quickly averted their gaze before Naruto realized what happened. Then, the ninja made a single order. An extra large miso ramen with char siu pork and all the toppings. The cook skillfully prepared the order, and rested the bowl right in front of the ninja. The steam curled up from the giant, ceramic bowl as its warmth seeped into the boy's bones. The ninja dipped his spoon into the broth, and collected a short, stretchy noodle. The boy's head barely reached the countertop. The ninja could just see Naruto's bright, expectant eyes widen with anticipation. On second thought, the ninja started, "Maybe you should have all of it," and plopped the liquid back into the bowl. He slid the bowl down to the boy and ushered Naruto to taste. The boy greedily wrapped as much of the noodles he could with chopsticks and stuffed his face full of them. He sipped the savory, salty broth and swallowed the juicy pork whole, eating as if this meal were his last. Until finally, all that remained was a bowl of broth, which he raised to his mouth and slurped loudly. The whole time the ninja didn't say a word, but watched as the big bowl covered the boy's entire head. He wondered how the boy managed to fare on his own for this long. The boy exhaled sharply, pleased. He just found his new favorite food in the whole world, and nothing would compare to that moment. The sun started to set once Naruto finished his bowl, and the ninja had to leave. But before he left, the boy realized he didn't know the kind man's name. He called out and asked for his name. The ninja teased the boy, "Eh? Why should I tell you? I don't even know who you are." The boy grinned, proudly declaring, "I'm Naruto, the next Hokage, ya know." "Really now?" The ninja chuckled, and playfully said, "Well, Naruto the next Hokage, I'm Shisui." The bells rang away. They signaled the end of a boring lecture by Ruka-sensei. Naruto quickly gathered his things and sprinted out of the room. He roughly pushed away the other students clamoring to exit. Shisui said he'd come today. Naruto nearly skipped with excitement down the hallway, much to the other students' annoyance. But Naruto didn't care. The sooner he met with Shisui, the better. Shisui could help him with his studies, and Naruto would finally show a certain classmate how shuriken are really thrown. Outside the academy gates, a crowd of eager parents welcomed their children to take home. Some briefly glared at Naruto and stuck their noses high up in disgust as he flashed by. The adults were tall, and Naruto was really small. He couldn't see Shisui in the crowd, and for a moment worried that Shisui didn't come at all. But as he twirled about amongst the clamor, Naruto noticed that friendly grin and Tonto blade Shisui carried so proudly. The Uchiha leaned against a tree with an empty swing. Once Shisui stood up to greet the small boy, Naruto's eyes brightened and he tackled the Uchiha. He wrapped his tiny arms around one of Shisui's legs. Shisui chuckled, "Hey, careful Naruto. You're so strong, I nearly fell over." But Naruto kept grinning from ear to ear. Then, the sound of sandals shuffled by, and a tall, looming figure entered Naruto's sight. "Oh, Itachi," Shisui cocked his head back. He greeted the man, "Picking up Sasuke today?" "My father was busy at the police office today," Itachi said, "so I figured I'd surprise my little brother for once." Naruto's chest tightened, and remembered what happened today at practice with Sasuke. The boy looked away from Itachi. He opted to hide behind Shisui and pretend he never saw the ninja. Shisui didn't seem to notice, and continued his conversation. He happily chatted Itachi's ear off on just about anything: the weather, their clan, and their recent missions. It seemed as if Shisui held Sasuke's older brother in high regard. Naruto kept himself from Itachi's view, worried that the tall ninja would see him and try and talk to him. "Big brother." A familiar voice sent shivers up Naruto's spine. He yanked his head backward and noticed that kid happily sprint towards them. Naruto pulled on Shisui's shirt. "Shisui, let's go." "Go?" Shisui blinked. "Go where?" "Anywhere but here," Naruto muttered, "I don't want to." But before Shisui and him left, Sasuke ran up and embraced his elder brother. "What are you doing here? I thought father was supposed to pick me up today." "And Shisui, you're here too. Why are you?" And then that kid locked eyes with Naruto. Sasuke's smile disappeared. "What's he doing here?" "Ah," Shisui smiled, "so you know Naruto? I'm his mentor." "Mentor?" Sasuke furrowed his brow, confused. Naruto shifted uneasily as he looked up to Shisui. He didn't like how formal the word sounded. "Yeah," Shisui explained, "the Hokage personally asked me to keep this little monster out of trouble." And then the Uchiha ruffled the blonde's hair. Naruto brushed Shisui's hand away. He knew Shisui meant it as a joke, but the idea of that kid hearing him say it made Naruto mad. Is he your classmate, Sasuke? Itachi asked. Sasuke nodded. He's been in my class since the first day. Is that so? Shisui said. Why don't we get together and train, eh? No way. Both Naruto and Sasuke suddenly exclaimed. Shisui stood still and blinked dumbfounded. Big brother, Sasuke told Itachi, you promised you'd train me in kunai when you got the time. I want to do that rather than hang around this kid. You promised it'd just be the two of us, Shisui. Naruto cried to his mentor. Adults still waiting for their kids whispered amongst themselves. He's so loud, they'd say, and, what a troublesome kid. Shisui glared at the ones uttering those words and they quickly fell silent. Then Shisui knelt down to Naruto and asked, what did you have in mind today then? I want you to train me in shuriken techniques. Naruto said. Yeah, you could use the work, Sasuke dropped, especially after what happened today. Naruto glared at Sasuke, whom glared back in disdain. Oh, what happened today? Shisui asked Naruto. Ah, well, Naruto laughed nervously. We practiced throwing shuriken today, that's all, y'all, no? Yeah, right, Sasuke said. You nearly hit Iruka-sensei in the face with one and didn't even hit the target once. It was a joke. Naruto shot off. Just a joke, y'all, no. Sasuke doubted that. Besides, Naruto continued, when Shisui's done teaching me, I'll be better than you at shuriken. Sasuke shook his head. My brother taught me shuriken techniques, and he's the best in my entire clan. Nah, Naruto heatedly said, Shisui's the best ninja there is. He could take your brother any time, any place, y'all, no. The two kids butted heads, and grinded their teeth. Now, Shisui said in a calm voice, let's not get ahead of ourselves here. But you can definitely beat him. Right, Shisui? Naruto asked. HMPH. Sasuke sounded, I mean, you're strong Shisui, but my brother is stronger than you. Isn't that right, big brother? Itachi's eyes briefly widened, stunned. He turned to Shisui for help. But Shisui scratched his nose and grinned. Well, I can't let that go. There's only one way to settle this, a duel. Naruto and Sasuke cheered, but Itachi briefly scowled at Shisui for hustling him into a fight. The two Uchihas took the kids to a clearing some distance away from the main street. They stood by a large creek on one side and were surrounded by a forest of pine and maple trees on the other. Naruto and Sasuke, the eager spectators, sat on old, worn-out tree stumps as the Uchiha shinobi stood face to face in the middle of the clearing. Shisui, go! Naruto cheered while flailing his hands in the air. You can beat him, big brother! Sasuke shouted. As the two children screamed, Shisui grinned to an annoyed Itachi. What are you trying to achieve from this, Shisui? Itachi asked his friend. The Uchiha felt somewhat betrayed by Shisui. They agreed to never spar in front of Sasuke. Itachi's little brother looked up to him. It'd wound both Itachi's and Sasuke's pride just to see Shisui point his tanto blade up at his throat. But then again, Shisui always had a twisted sense of humor. Shisui winked, don't worry, Itachi, and waved his hand, just come at me with everything you got. Suddenly, his eyes turned red. Blackened only by the tomo swirling about. Itachi's eyes, likewise, turned red. Idiot, shut up. Sasuke shouted at Naruto, they just activated their Sharingan, it's gonna start. Sharingan? Naruto cocked his head, confused. He's never heard of that word before. Sasuke smirked, it's my clan's strongest ability. You have to be an Uchiha to understand. Naruto grinded his teeth, he thinks he's better than me? The two children sat in silence. Naruto fuming at Sasuke's retort, but also watching anxiously to see which Uchiha was really the strongest. Shisui leaned a bit forward, keeping pressure on his toes. Whereas, Itachi swung his long sword to his belt, and bent his knees to firmly plant them to the ground. Here I come, Shisui exclaimed, and quickly charged Itachi. They exchanged fists at first, both trying to jab aggressively at each other. With the palm of his hand, Shisui tried to strike Itachi's chin. Itachi evaded it, and gripped Shisui's overextended wrist and flung him overhead. He slammed Shisui right on his back. Shisui quickly recovered, rolling to Itachi's side and jammed his fist into Itachi's gut. Yeah, Naruto cheered, he landed a hit. Sasuke snorted, it's not over yet. Itachi used the force from Shisui's punch and rolled backwards some distance away. Shisui produced shuriken from his hands and flung them at Itachi one at a time to keep the Uchiha on the defense. Itachi took out a kunai and deflected the oncoming shuriken. Shisui smirked, standing still's never good, and charged Itachi outright again. But with his other hand, Itachi surprised Shisui as he suddenly flung 3 shuriken and formed a one-hand seal. He shouted, "Fire style! Phoenix Fire Jutsu!" and expelled 3 balls of fire from his mouth that encapsulated the shuriken. The shuriken fireballs twirled unpredictably towards Shisui. The elder Uchiha's mouth briefly opened in surprise. It took a lot of skill to do that jutsu with just one hand. But he quickly recovered, and Shisui formed the tiger seal with his hands. His body flickered for a split second and then disappeared altogether. The fireballs, with nowhere to hit, dissipated as the shuriken thudded against the trunk of a nearby pine tree. In that moment, Shisui's body flickered behind Itachi, and he drew his tanto blade. "Shisui's fast," Naruto exclaimed. Itachi's eyes briefly widened, shocked. Then, Shisui poured chakra into the hilt of his tanto, and produced a blazing wing of fire that extended his blade. Sasuke sweated. He feared his brother took a direct hit from the fiery slash. But luckily, Itachi morphed into a murder of crows. Some started crazily pecking at Shisui. The Uchiha promptly sheathed his tanto and flickered away. A gentle plop sounded as Shisui materialized atop the calm, blue creek. The crows followed, but suddenly stopped and gathered by the shore of the creek. In their place, Itachi stood. Naruto grunted disappointed. "Shisui, come on, kill him already." Naruto shouted in encouragement. Shisui's ears perked, and he thought, he shouldn't think of it like that. Itachi took Shisui's momentary pause as an opportunity and jumped. Shisui's eyes darted back to Itachi, and he gripped the blade of his tanto. He was about to unsheath it, but a moment's hesitation stopped him from fully drawing it out. Naruto noticed the tanto shine from the sunlight, as a maple leaf seemingly sliced in two before it hit the blade. The blonde took note of this, and thought the battle would end in Shisui's favor. But Shisui hesitated for a second, and the battle ended with Itachi's blade pointing at his throat. Shisui smiled and relaxed his grip. "Guess I lose," he coolly said. The bright red of his eyes faded into black, just as Itachi's did the same. Sasuke cheered in excitement as Naruto crossed his arms in frustration. The 2 Uchihas walked slowly back to the children. Sasuke happily jumped around his brother. "I knew you were the strongest, big brother. I just knew it," he kept saying. Naruto, in the meantime, sat on his stump and looked away from Shisui. He wanted to tell Shisui something, but not in front of the other Uchiha. Shisui didn't ask, and instead casually patted Itachi on the back. "Guess you got more wins than me now." Itachi softly smiled. He felt indebted to Shisui. "Sasuke," Itachi said, "why don't I teach you some kunai techniques while the sun's still out?" Sasuke nodded excitedly. "Yeah, let's do it," and happily grabbed Itachi's hand with his small one as they walked away. Shisui waved his hand goodbye to the 2 of them. Suddenly, Naruto grumbled, "Why'd you let him win?" He still sat on the trunk, but glared at Shisui. "What do you mean by that?" Shisui lightly asked. "Your sword," Naruto pointed at it. "I saw the blade change somehow. Like you widened it with something invisible. It was so sharp, I even saw a leaf cut in 2 without even touching the blade." "Y'all, no." "Huh," Shisui scratched his nose. "You saw that, eh?" And deep down, he thought, the kid's got a good eye if he could notice something that small. "Well, I planned on using something called wind release," Shisui explained. "I was gonna surprise Itachi with it. I might have even won too." "Then why didn't you?" Naruto asked, frustrated. "I figured I'd let him have this one," Shisui shrugged. "Let him win? Why?" Naruto furrowed his brow, confused. "See, Naruto, it's like this," Shisui began, and he sat down by Naruto. "It's something I call victory in defeat." "Victory in defeat?" Naruto's eyes thinned into slivers. He didn't understand the meaning in that contradiction. "You can lose a battle, but still win a war," Shisui simply said, and then elaborated, "Itachi knows I let him win. He's got a kid brother to keep appearances for, after all. I would have liked to see that kid put in his place," Naruto mumbled. "Yeah, but," Shisui continued, "now, Itachi owes me one." Someday, I'll call in that favor I did for him, and he'll come to my beck and call when I really need him to. You get it? I guess. Naruto softly said, then groaned, I would have liked you to stick up for me once though, no. Shisui laughed, you're not shy about your feelings at all, are you? But Naruto remained silent, and looked vacantly at the creek as the water sloshed by. Shisui sensed something amiss, and asked, does it really bother you that I didn't win the match? You're fun and all, Shisui, Naruto started, but like you said, I'm just a monster the Hokage wanted kept out of trouble. Shisui stayed quiet for a bit. He didn't think that comment would have cut the boy so deeply. Naruto jumped off the stump and onto the ground. His little body stepped forward as he asked, well, enough about that. Can you teach me how to use shuriken properly now? But Shisui thought otherwise, and he knelt down to Naruto and ruffled his spiky hair. Naruto shook Shisui's hand away, and angrily looked at the Uchiha. What was that for? Nothing, Shisui smiled, but I think I wanna go get something to eat instead, let's go. I'm not hungry, Naruto simply said. But Shisui suddenly wrapped his arm around Naruto's waist and carried him at the hip. Naruto thrashed about, the heck are you doing? He exclaimed. I wanna go eat, Shisui simply said. I don't want to, no. Let me down, Naruto shouted. Shisui shrugged. I can't let you wander off by yourself though, can I? You're just a mentor. You don't have to pretend like you care about me. Hey now, don't say harsh things like that, Shisui playfully added. You're like a kid brother to me, after all. Naruto stopped squirming, and looked up to Shisui as he walked down the beaten path. Kid brother? We're not even related. But this time, Shisui remained silent. Can you stop? Naruto asked. You're hurting me. Shisui did so, and lowered Naruto back onto his feet. He thought that would be the last he ever spoke to the boy. But then Naruto said, hey, if I'm like a kid brother to you, carry me like Itachi carries that kid. What, like piggyback? Shisui raised an eyebrow. Naruto firmly nodded. Well, alright, and Shisui knelt down and arched his back. He cocked his head, get on then. The boy quickly wrapped his arms around Shisui's neck, just as Shisui grabbed Naruto's thighs. And for the first time in Naruto's life, he could see everything the way adults saw it. Naruto giggled, and grasped the tree branches that once loomed over him, and taunted him. As the twig snapped, Shisui spoke, listen, Naruto. I ain't gonna lie to you, at first I thought the Hokage was crazy when he told me I'd be mentoring you. Naruto rested his tiny head on Shisui's shoulders, and let him continue, I've lost a lot of people I cared about. My dad died when I was young, and I lost someone really close to me after I became a Chunin. After that, I thought the only people I'll ever really care about are my comrades, my fellow ninja. That's why I care about Itachi. Because he's like me in a way, and I don't want to see him get hurt the same way I was. You understand? I guess so, Naruto softly said. Shisui continued, but after I spent some time with you, I started to realize there's more to life than being a ninja. And that's why I'm not gonna leave, not even when you hate me. Then Shisui turned his head slightly and winked at the boy. 'Cause that's what big brothers are for, to drive their little brothers crazy. Naruto grinned from ear to ear hearing that, and proceeded to tightly squeeze Shisui with his arms around his neck. Oi, stop, Shisui suddenly exclaimed, you're choking me. But Naruto kept giggling. Shisui carried Naruto all the way to Ichiraku's ramen, and Naruto for once looked down at the adults that looked down at him for so long. And when they finally arrived at the stand, Naruto's newfound brother bought the both of them an extra-large miso soup with char siu pork and all the toppings. From then on, Shisui did whatever Naruto wanted. If there was a festival, Shisui would take him and treat him to all the candies and games Naruto could think of. And if Naruto wanted help training, Shisui always stayed late at night to help him. Whether it was kunai or shuriken training, the Uchiha was remarkably patient. The one thing Naruto loved was when Shisui carried him on his own back. And up above the Uchiha's shaggy head, Naruto could look down on all the other villagers that reviled him. What made Shisui's visits the best, however, was when they'd ended with a hot bowl of ramen. Shisui would tease Naruto every now and then. But unlike the bitter looks and nasty remarks from the villagers, it was the light-hearted banter of a big brother to his little one. But that all changed when Naruto turned 7, and he learned that nothing lasted forever. It happened on a cold night. Naruto woke up to a light tapping sound from the windows. The blonde lazily opened his eyes. He could hear whistles from Konoha's guards screech in the distance. Something put the village on high alert. The blonde noticed a shadow blot out the moonlight in his window. He rubbed the sand from his eyes, and the blurry shadow sharpened to a familiar face winking at him. "Shisui," Naruto happily exclaimed, and rolled open the window. "What are you doing here? It's late out." His brother didn't enter, instead he crouched on the windowsill nearby, and said, "I was just passing by and figured I'd pay you a visit." But once Naruto looked up to his face, the blonde frowned. As the moonlight shined, Naruto noticed Shisui kept his right eye shut as blood dripped down his cheek. "Hey, what's wrong with your eye?" Naruto asked, concerned. Shisui held his finger up to his lips, and both of them silently waited until the whistles of Konoha's guards softened in the distance. Then, before Naruto could utter another word, the Uchiha loosened his harness with Shisui's beloved Tanto blade. "It's a bit soon," Shisui started as he handed it to the boy, "but I wanted to give you a gift." Naruto shivered as the village breeze blew in loose dirt and dried leaves. He hesitantly took the blade. "What's going on?" the boy asked. "It's nowhere near my birthday." "Because," Shisui started, but he quickly stopped himself before telling the 7-year-old a long tale. Shisui averted his gaze, and looked out into his homeland. His voice fell silent. It was a beautiful sight, the village. He took his time to soak in the view, as if it were the last time he'll ever see Konohagakure again. He pulled his eye away from the village, and laughed, sending shivers down the little boy's spine. "I guess I got myself into some trouble. This might be the only chance I'll have to give it to you." "Let's go to the old man then," Naruto exclaimed. "I'm sure he can help. He's the Hokage. He can do whatever he wants." Shisui stared out in the distance, up to the stone-carved faces of the 4 Hokage. "Do whatever he wants, huh? I wonder about that," he strangely remarked. "Shisui? Don't worry," Shisui assured the boy. "It's nothing I can't handle, but I have to go." "Go? No?" Naruto exclaimed. "What if you don't come back?" "Don't sweat it, Naruto." The Uchiha grinned, but his voice cracked. "I got a friend I need to see. I can't leave him behind." "But what about me?" Naruto cried. "Why are you leaving me behind?" "It's not that like that," Shisui said. "I promised I'd help him, and I never go back on my word." A whistle screeched just down the street from Naruto's apartment. Shisui reflexively gripped the empty place where his Tanto once was. Failing that, he produced a kunai from the holster on his hip. He couldn't be caught, not like this. There was somewhere he needed to be, and someone he needed to see. He'd sooner kill than go back on his word. Naruto picked up on this. Once the whistling passed, Shisui lowered the knife. Naruto grabbed Shisui's wrist and held it tight with all the strength his small body could muster. Shisui was stronger though and pulled his hand away from Naruto's grip. "It'll be okay, Naruto," he told his kid brother. Seeing no other recourse, Naruto jumped out onto the windowsill. He wrapped his small arms around Shisui's waist tightly. The orphan wouldn't let go. He'd jealously guard his one and only family. And as his lips quivered, he sobbed hot tears onto Shisui's coat. Shisui rubbed his back but kept silent. There was nothing Shisui could say to make it better. When Naruto had no more tears to weep, he looked up to his first friend for the last time. And Shisui wrapped his arm around Naruto and tightly embraced him. Shisui ran his fingers through the blonde's spiky hair. He smiled, but his words were full of sorrow. "Don't worry," he'd calmly tell the boy as he sobbed, "it'll be fine." Naruto wanted Shisui to stay longer, but the sharp whistles of the leaf ninja returned. Shisui had to leave, and in a flash, Shisui flickered away. He left the orphan to grasp at the air and rub his hands at the spot his big brother once sat on. Naruto stared at that spot for hours. And the rest of the night, the orphan crouched by the windowsill, and held on to what became his most prized possession. An incessant tapping sound rudely woke up Iruka Amino from his slumber. The Chunin lazily opened an eye, and noticed a raven furiously tap against a glass door to his balcony. Iruka turned around and hoped the raven would get bored and eventually leave. But then the raven resorted to pelting the glass door with small rocks to get his attention. Iruka sighed and tore his bedsheets away from him. He opened the sliding glass door, and noticed the raven had a scrap of paper tied to its leg by twine. Iruka raised an eyebrow but knelt down to untie the note from the black bird. And once it, along with a small, silver key, dropped into his hands, the raven abruptly flew away. Iruka unfolded the paper. To his surprise, it was a letter postmarked 5 years ago. Curious, Iruka read the letter in the safety of his own apartment. Dear Mr. Amino, if you're reading this, you must be wondering why it's postmarked 5 years ago. The truth is I've arranged this letter to reach you at this time when I sent it. I will not go into the why, as it isn't necessary for what I must ask of you. Please go to the locker numbered 61 in City Hall. Once there, use the key that this scroll comes with to open it. Inside you'll find a scroll. Take it, and gift it to Naruto. Iruka rubbed his eyes and tried to read from the beginning, but the words started to suddenly fade. It must have been put on a timed jutsu. The ink slowly bleached away into the parchment. He desperately read the rest as fast as he could. Do not tell anyone of this, not even the Hokage. If you do, it could end in your death. And then the kanji turned white. End in your death, the words rang in Iruka's head as he nervously swallowed. Naruto, what did you get yourself into? Iruka muttered under his breath. The academy instructor took his sandals and crammed his feet into them. Then, he donned his green flak jacket and fastened it in place around his chest. The whole time, Iruka wondered who sent him this mysterious message. Naruto's been alone for most of his life. Iruka's watched him day by day in the academy as the blonde slacked off in his studies. He proved to be an excellent student in the beginning. Someone certainly helped him out with shuriken training among other ninja techniques. For a while, Naruto rivaled Sasuke, the class prodigy, it seemed. But that all changed when he turned 7, and the boy became known as a troublemaker and prankster around the village. He didn't take the class seriously enough, and always seemed to find ways to distract himself from the deafening silence that often filled the cramped lecture halls. It was almost as if he didn't want to be lost in his own thoughts. Eventually, Iruka took a fatherly role at behest of the late third Hokage. He'd scold Naruto when he did something bad and praised Naruto when he did something good. It took time, as initially Naruto hated Iruka for that. And once when Iruka asked why he had a tanto blade strapped to his back, Naruto snapped at Iruka and said, "That's none of your business, no." But Iruka didn't give up. He didn't care that Naruto was the Jinchuriki of the nine-tailed fox, which killed his parents. Eventually, Iruka's persistence paid off. It happened one day after his instruction at the academy. He decided to try out ramen at the Ichiraku ramen stand. And once he sat down to make his order, Iruka noticed his spiky blonde pupils struggled to come up with the money to pay off his own bowl of ramen. If not for Iruka, the boy would have probably had to scrub dishes into the late hours of the night. After that, Naruto opened right up and the rest, as it said, was history. As Iruka walked down the main street of the village, he looked up to the great stone faces of the old Hokage. Naruto, Iruka thought. You better not be in some sort of trouble, but I guess you'd find a way out of it, you always do. Naruto's grown a lot, and Iruka could hardly believe it. The #1 loudmouthed ninja even saved his life. He also performed admirably in the Chunin exams, and not only fought against the hidden sand ninja, but also brought back the next Hokage after the third's demise at Orochimaru's hands. Somehow, Naruto's become more and more powerful as the years go by. And Iruka couldn't be any prouder of him. Once Iruka arrived at the great red building of the city hall, the Chunin instructor tried to enter as inconspicuously as possible. Iruka would much rather not be caught with whatever potentially illicit scroll in his possession. At first, the Chunin wanted to stow the key away and pretend it never existed, but the wording in it was unusual. Gift it to Naruto, it said, and that sounded funny to Naruto's father figure. It didn't sound sinister. Instead, it sounded more benevolent and kind. As if the mysterious ninja wanted Iruka to perform the role of messenger in Naruto's life. Iruka tried not to seem too suspicious. The city hall was, of course, a public building. Ninja could come and go as they pleased within its walls. Only, Iruka had no business being there and didn't want to be troubled by a curious colleague. The locker rooms in the Hokage building were separated into 2 sections. One for the general shinobi, such as himself or Kakashi. And one for the special shinobi, which was a nice way of saying Anbu and the Hokage's personal guard. Whoever Naruto's mysterious benefactor was, they were either a skilled shinobi or very high up in the village hierarchy. These special shinobi were feared even among the general ones. They do the wet work that respectable shinobi such as Iruka would never have the stomach of doing. Especially the Anbu and the alleged root organization. They were the rough men and women ready to do violence under the cover of darkness. The ones willing to suffer in silence in order to preserve the peace enjoyed by Konoha's people. Iruka felt a jolt of excitement once he entered down the special shinobi's corridor. It wasn't technically prohibited for Iruka to be there, but he had no reason to be there. Luckily, the Anbu ninja didn't seem to be the talking type, especially the ones in their ceramic masks. Many of them shoved their way through the cramped halls to wherever they needed to go. The locker rooms were located at the very end of the long corridor. The Chunin tiptoed in and took note of the numbers painted across the lockers. It was cold in there, and very dim. Iruka wanted to leave the place as soon as he could. Finally, he reached locker 61. It was nestled in the corner of the room, lonesome and unremarkable. But Iruka's eyes widened once he realized that the locker didn't contain any keyholes. Apparently, the Anbu have an honor system. There were no locks at all. Iruka could freely open it. And Iruka did, while scratching his head. What am I supposed to do with this then? Iruka asked himself. He held the silver key in his left hand. The locker was empty. There wasn't anything in it, save for a rod which could carry coat hangers. Dust collected at the bottom. Iruka could tell that there were pictures once taped in the locker's walls, but someone came and tore them out. The slivers of tape that remained still kept a picture's corners glued to the metallic surface. Iruka nearly closed the locker altogether, until the key suddenly took a life of its own. Instantly, it pulled Iruka inside. It felt alive, searching frantically for something to open. Iruka didn't fight the key, and let it take him to the very top above the rod. He heard a clicking sound. The Chunin opened his hand slightly, and noticed the key squirm about. He let go, and the silver key twisted with a loud clank. Suddenly, a hidden shelf flickered into existence. And it automatically emptied its contents onto the locker floor. With a loud clang, a thick, white scroll disturbed the dust and sent a cloud of dirt flying into the air. Iruka coughed, and looked around the locker room quickly. Thankfully, none of the Anbu were there. He knelt down and quickly hid the scroll in one of his green flak jacket's pockets. Iruka suddenly heard a sizzling sound as he looked up to the hidden shelf. The silver key popped, and the shelf disappeared again. Iruka scratched his head. I guess the ninja really didn't want to leave a trace, he thought. Then, Iruka tensed as a voice rasped from behind, "Leaf ninja disappear if they're not careful." The Chunin twisted around, and his eyes widened in fear. At first sight, Iruka bent his knee. "Lord Danzo," he greeted. "I don't have time for flattery," the elder barked, unamused. "Tell me what you're doing in my domain." Iruka's mind ground to a halt. The elder lived in the shadows, but his name lived in infamy. The darkness of shinobi, the Jonin nervously whispered in their own homes. That was what they called the seemingly feeble, old man. He controlled much of the Anbu, held sway with the village and Jonin councils, as well as the fire daimyo himself. Little escaped that man's notice. Lord Danzo, you see." Iruka scratched his head. The elder's icy stare tied his tongue. "Lord Danzo, always a pleasure to see you," a familiar voice called out. From behind a row of lockers, a Jonin with spiky white hair and a black mask covering the bottom half of his face stepped out. His sandals shuffled by on the cold, concrete floor as he stood at Iruka's side. Iruka was never happier to see Kakashi than now. "Kakashi?" Danzo spoke. "I do hope you have a good explanation for visiting this place after so many years." Kakashi scratched his head. "We heard that the Anbu were looking to recruit some of the Chunin candidates from the exams, you see." "Yes, and?" Danzo impatiently asked. "Well, Iruka was worried about his students," Kakashi quickly answered. "Nice, Kakashi," Iruka thought as he tried to hold back his relief. "And he wanted me to show him what they'll be in for," Kakashi explained. "You can learn a lot about the Leaf's special forces just by their locker rooms, I say." Danzo snorted. "Well then, tell him not to open up any more lockers. Anbu stow a lot of things in them that could identify who they are." Then the honored elder hobbled away on his wooden cane. "So for your safety and theirs, I'd suggest respecting their space." Kakashi lowered his head in respect. "Of course, Lord Danzo." Content: the Lord Danzo exited the locker room. Iruka and Kakashi wasted no time exiting the city hall and rushed to a public park. So, Kakashi started as he leaned against the railing. The two stood by a nearby river which ran through the village. What were you really doing in those locker rooms? Ah, well, Iruka bit his lip, it's a bit hard to explain. Try me. You'll protect Naruto no matter what, right? Iruka suddenly asked. Protect Naruto? What brought that on? Kakashi raised an eyebrow. And Iruka explained everything to Naruto's Jonin mentor. Kakashi has saved Naruto's life on more than one occasion, and Iruka saw no reason not to trust him now. So Iruka told him about the raven, the note with the disappearing ink, and the hidden shelf that evaporated into thin air. Then, he unclasped his pocket and produced the white scroll. Whoever it was, Iruka started, he wanted Naruto to have it. The thing is, the note warned me if anyone knew I had this I'd likely die. Well, then, Kakashi took the scroll from Iruka, and stuck his thumb in between the creases. Let's see what the mystery ninja wants Naruto to have. And the Jonin unrolled the entire scroll. Once it unfurled, Naruto's two mentors expectantly looked over the parchment's contents. But there were no words, only strange inked lines weaved into an interlocking chain upon the paper and a swirling circular design in the center of it. Scribbled on the side in kanji said, "Place blood and circle." Place blood and circle? Iruka's brows furrowed. It's a summoning scroll, interesting, Kakashi said as he bit his thumb. Let's see what happens when I do this. Summoning jutsu. And pressed his bloodied thumb right in the middle of the circle. But nothing happened. You sure it's a summoning scroll, Kakashi? Iruka asked, unsure. It is, Kakashi simply said, these designs are sealing jutsu. It must be keyed to Naruto's blood though. What should we do then? Kakashi sighed, as he re-rolled the scroll up. I guess that means we have no choice but to tell Naruto about it. Order up. Tucci, Ichiraku Ramen's shop owner, shouted, 1 extra large miso ramen with char shao pork and all toppings. The owner rested the hot ceramic bowl on the bar, in front of Naruto Uzumaki. The blonde grinned. He gripped the wooden chopsticks and snapped them apart. The ninja rested on a stool, and loudly slurped in the noodles. No doubt, Naruto stood out. He had many striking features, whiskered cheeks, blue eyes, and a bright, orange jumpsuit. But the one thing he wanted people to notice the most was strapped to his back, a leather harness carrying a short sword. It's been a good day for Naruto. He's just arrived back with the Lady Tsunade, the next Hokage. And more importantly, Naruto's learned a powerful new jutsu, the Rasengan. Nothing made his heart swell more than to know he was one step closer to becoming Hokage himself. Master Jiraiya even lauded Naruto's mastery of the jutsu in 3 days. Especially his unique solution of which relied upon his clones to control the concentrated ball of chakra as it formed. But his happy meal was interrupted once Kakashi and Iruka entered the stand. As they pulled away the curtains, Kakashi greeted Naruto, "Hey there." Kakashi-sensei, Naruto exclaimed, and ushered them to sit next to him. Come for an order of ramen? It's good as always, y'all. No. Some other time, Kakashi dismissed. I'm still a little weak from that encounter with Itachi. Naruto solemnly hummed in acknowledgement and continued to sip the salty broth. He couldn't believe Itachi turned out evil. Or that Itachi was capable of hurting not only Kakashi, but his own brother as well. Naruto didn't like to think of it. The thought of all those Uchiha massacred by his hands, and worse the thought that Itachi plunged his sword in Shisui's back. None of it made sense, and Naruto racked his brain trying to understand it after all these years. They seemed like comrades, Shisui and Itachi. And Naruto never thought for a second that Itachi ever beat Shisui. No, if Itachi killed Shisui, it was because the clan killer betrayed his trust. So, what are you guys doing here then? Naruto asked. He sharply sighed as he rested the empty bowl on the bar. Well, we have a present for you, Iruka spoke up. A present? Why now? Naruto asked. He eagerly smiled. Wait. Don't tell me I've been picked as a candidate for the Anbu. Kakashi and Iruka exchanged a nervous look. It's true that the Anbu were looking for recruits from the Chunin candidates. Naruto's been eager to join the special forces for some time. Possibly because those selected take an accelerated path to the rank of Jonin, although there were no official ranks in the Anbu themselves. Granted, Those that successfully complete their tour in the Anbu definitely leave stronger than the typical shinobi. Well, no, Kakashi evaded, they're still in the selection process. Naruto nodded and asked, then what's the present? It's funny, Iruka nervously laughed, that's what we'd like to know ourselves. Naruto raised an eyebrow, what do you mean? After Naruto paid for his meal, the three went out to a clearing by the creek. Iruka explained everything again in great detail. The raven, the key, and the scroll. Naruto didn't have a clue himself. As they walked out of the forest, into the wide open clearing, Iruka asked, did you know anyone from 5 years ago then? The letter was dated from that time. I didn't really have a lot of friends growing up. Naruto scratched his head, well, except him. Who's him? Kakashi asked. Naruto's bright face turned dour and cold. It's not something I want to talk about, the blonde dropped. Kakashi didn't press the matter. He understood that some things were left buried in the past. Well, here's the scroll, Kakashi said, and he rolled it out onto the grassy surface. The smudge mark from his own attempt still stained the center of it. So, summoning scroll, right? Naruto asked, unsure. Kakashi nodded. But I already got Gamabunta and the frogs in a contract. Won't this, mess that up? It won't. You can have as many summoning animals as you want, Kakashi explained. Naruto nodded, here goes nothing, then, and he bit his thumb. He planted the blood right atop the bloodstain in the center of the scroll and hollered, summoning jutsu. A cloud of smoke burst from the scroll, and the three ninja coughed as they waved the haze away. Once the smoke dissipated, Naruto looked way out in front of him. He expected something big and colorful, but there was nothing. Oi, boy! A voice called out from below, down here. Boy! Naruto looked back down on the scroll. Perched on the parchment was a raven with a scroll strapped to its back by a leather harness, and on its leg a note tied with twine. It looked right up at him. A crow? Naruto blinked. Not a crow. The black bird angrily squawked, a raven. Don't compare me to those mindless animals. Okay? Naruto scratched his nose and looked to his two teachers for answers. But they too were dumbfounded. Boy, where am I? How'd you summon me? The raven demanded. I'm not a boy. I'm Naruto. Meanwhile, Iruka whispered to Kakashi, what's going on? I'm not sure, Kakashi whispered back, but let's keep quiet for now. How old are you? The raven called out to Naruto. 13, what of it? Naruto replied. Then you're a stripling, a boy. Whatever. Naruto waved his hand, annoyed, what do you want? What do you mean what do I want? What do you want? The raven pointed out. What do you mean what do I want? I just put blood on some paper and you showed up. You can't do that. But I did. No, you can't do that. No contract, no summon. That's how it works, boy. But you're right here. Naruto stamped his foot, frustrated. I smeared some blood, and you came out in a puff of smoke. A likely story, the raven said. Suspicious, this must be one of his tricks. Whose tricks? But the raven ended the conversation. He hopped around on the paper, calling out, Shisui. Shisui, get over here. Naruto's blood ran cold hearing that name. His arms dangled in place as his pupils dilated into dots. Kakashi and Iruka noticed but remained silent. Meanwhile, the raven muttered, 5 years without a hello, and now this. I'm gonna give that boy a peckin'. Prank's not even that good. Oi! Naruto hoarsely spoke. He knelt down to the raven's height. The raven hopped around, his beak snapped. Oh, you're still here? Shisui, how do you know him? Naruto demanded. So you know that student of mine. What's he gotten himself into now? Tell me, where is he? Naruto suddenly shouted. What's going on? Kakashi-sensei? Iruka-sensei? But the two teachers were speechless. The raven jumped away and flew up into the air. The twine loosened on his leg, and the scrap of paper fell down onto the grass. You're crazy, boy, the raven remarked, and flew off. Wait, Naruto shouted at it, but the raven kept flying higher and higher, up into the air. Naruto ran after it, screaming as loud as he could, wait. Come back here. Kakashi picked up the scrap of paper that the raven left behind just as Iruka called out. Wait, Naruto. But the blonde jumped over the creek and chased the small black speck in the air. Iruka was about to give chase, but Kakashi suddenly gripped his shoulder and held him back. Kakashi, Iruka exclaimed, but Kakashi simply handed Iruka the note and told him to read it. Iruka took it. His eyes opened wider with each passing word he read. Naruto. I'm sure by now, you're wondering what's going on. You must be confused and scared. Hearing my name must come as a shock. And all those feelings that you've buried have crawled back to the surface. You must have been lonely without me there. No one to carry you on their shoulders and to wait for you day in and day out for. When I left, you were probably forced down a long, dark path full of pain and suffering, and I'm sorry I wasn't there to get you through it. But I know as I write my thoughts down on this scrap of paper, that you've grown into a fine ninja with your own comrades. And as you grow stronger, I know you'll eventually become Hokage. Now, by this time you're no doubt a ninja. And since you're old enough to understand what it means to fight for your village, I'm leaving you my summoning animal. His name is Yata, and he may be just as confused as you are, and a bit rough around the edges, but he's very wise and has been a faithful guide in my life. And knowing where I'll end up in the coming days, I wanted to give him to you before it was too late. Take him, as my last gift to you, and take the scroll that he carries on his back. I was never strong enough to learn that scroll's secret jutsu. And I think if I did, things would have been different for everyone. So, I'll give the scroll to you. Because I know you can master what I could not. And I know you'll use it to protect those around you, and to shoulder their burdens as I've shouldered yours. The flying Raijin jutsu. I know this technique will keep you on the beaten path. Your big brother, Shisui. Iruka raised his head, and stared out into the green, rolling hills and the dark forests beyond. He thought, so that's who took care of you before me, Naruto. Kakashi said, we should show Naruto this. But Iruka dropped the paper, and let the wind carry it away. Along with the loose leaves, the paper disappeared into the sky above. No, don't bother, Iruka said, the inks faded away already. And the two teachers watched, as their student and Shisui's helplessly chased the raven named Yata. Yata the raven soared high up in the sky, and scanned the markets and large thoroughfares of Konoha. But he couldn't find his summoner anywhere. He'd call out every now and then, and hope that his summoner would reply. But there was only silence. It seemed all the villagers were in a rush to prepare for the festivities that night. It was the Bon festival, and villagers clamored in cotton kimonos to and fro. Small, makeshift stalls opened as hot iron grills sizzled with fried buns. The sweet smell of candy caramelizing wafted throughout the village, and great wooden platforms were erected in the square in front of Konoha's city hall. Yata landed on the curved spires of Konoha's city hall. He'd survey the entire village from there. As he picked clean his feathers with his beak, Yata hoped that Shisui would join the festivities. Shisui always enjoyed a good festival. Yata had fond memories of the few times Shisui summoned him just for the fun of it. He never summoned him for the Bon festival though. Shisui always said he had someone to go with already, and Yata wouldn't have fun. If Yata protested, Shisui would tease him for being jealous. And that sent the raven squawking. But now, instead of Shisui greeting him, a loud ninja in an orange jumpsuit desperately shouted after him. The raven grimaced and quickly flew away. Just below Yata in the city hall, the Jonin and village elders convened to discuss promotions for the genin. It's normally a dull affair. The Jonin with genin pupils petition the Hokage for their students' promotion in front of the village and clan elders. Usually, the village and clan elders provide quiet support to the Hokage's verdict. But with the third Hokage's demise and the Akatsuki's brief, yet blatant infiltration of the village, the elders took a more outspoken role in the process. Now, the Hokage sat across a long table to the Lord Danzo. Flanked on her left were the Jonin and to her right the village and clan elders of Konoha. Promoting and rotating ninja has never been so tiresome or frustrating. Tsunade knew Danzo had something to do with it. He always managed to rile up the elders against her, and if the Hokage pushed too hard he'd unleash the fire daimyo on Tsunade to get his own way. How about Asuma's team? The lady Tsunade sighed and ran her fingers through a stack of papers. The sheets contained statistics, past mission reports, and reviews by various Jonin and Chunin shinobi regarding Asuma's pupils. The fifth Hokage continued, I see nothing but glowing reports, and the team has completed a grand total of 20 D rank and a few C rank ones too. An elderly lady didn't bat an eye as she dropped, no good. None of them won any of their one-on-one battles in the Chunin exams. Asuma grimaced from the other side of the table, yes, but Shikamaru Nara has shown himself a very capable shinobi, Lady Utatane. Oh yes, Kaharu Utatane replied, almost sarcastically. He performed very well in his battle with the Sand Kunoichi until he lost. Actually, Shikaku Nara, head of the Nara clan and coincidentally Shikamaru's father, came to the genin's defense. He captured the Sand Ninja before conceding defeat. I fail to see the difference, Kaharu retorted. Maybe I'm too frail in my old age to notice, she sardonically added. The fifth side, nevertheless, Shikamaru has shown unique initiative and strategic thinking. I personally nominate his promotion to Chunin. Lady Utatane and a bespectacled elder promptly looked to Lord Danzo. His cross-scared chin slowly lowered, presumably with permission. The elders agreed. Tsunade sighed in relief. Finally, a promotion without any incessant prattling and needless debate. That concludes the review, the fifth Hokage declared, and promptly rested her red conical hat upon her head. Have a happy Bon festival, everyone, she ended. Just as the chairs squeaked and Tsunade stood up, Lord Danzo spoke. We still have the matter of Anbu candidates to select. Tsunade twisted around, annoyed. She hated bureaucracy and would much rather settle her problems with her fists than to talk. Is there anyone that caught your eye, Lord Danzo? The fifth asked as she reseated herself and slouched over the table. Lord Danzo opened his left brown eye for the first time since the meeting took place. I've taken a keen interest in Neji Hyuga and Shino Aburame. Tsunade wondered, what are you planning, Danzo? The council debated the merits of Danzo's proposal. Lord Hiyashi Hyuga spoke first. The Hyuga clan believes Neji's skills are better suited in a more general position. His talents can best serve the village, in my humble opinion, in a frontline role as opposed to in the shadows. Might Guy also raised his voice. Neji is a strong and capable shinobi. And no offense to the Anbu, Lord Danzo, but they aren't meant for the soft-hearted. Are you saying that Neji is too weak to be a shinobi? The bespectacled elder pointed out. Not at all, Might Guy retorted. I'm saying I would never recommend any of my students to be a part of that group, Lord Mitokado. Before the elders could protest, Tsunade shouted, enough. Without both the clan heads and Jonin's support, the motion to rotate Neji Hyuga into the Anbu is dismissed. Next, Danzo remained stoic, but the elders openly shook their heads in disappointment. Tsunade furrowed her brow. He's up to something. Otherwise, he would have talked my ear off by now. Shino Aburame, Tsunade announced, a genin under Kurenai's team. He's passed the preliminaries and managed to subdue Konkuro of the Sand Village. He would have been his opponent in the semifinals. I don't have any personal grievance, a long, black-haired Jonin with red eyes said, but I wouldn't feel comfortable supporting it if the head of the Aburame clan has something to say on the matter. The Aburame clan elder, Shibi Aburame, sat silent. His eyes were obscured with dark-lensed glasses, and many wondered what his verdict would be. He finally spoke, my clan has sacrificed much for the good of the village. But I won't give my own son to you, Lord Danzo. The bespectacled Homura grimaced, our village narrowly escaped annihilation. This isn't the time to worry about your own clan, Lord Aburame. On the contrary, Shibi coolly replied, it's not because Shino is my own son that I failed to support this motion. It's because the Anbu already took Torun Aburame from my clan, and Lord Danzo agreed to leave Shino alone. Are we so desperate that the village breaks agreements with its own villagers? Lady Kaharu protested, we need Anbu. This village isn't secure without highly trained shinobi to watch in the shadows for interlopers. The late third Hokage cut back the budget and reserves of Anbu and we all paid the price for that error in judgment. If we had better security, then he would still be alive and our village wouldn't have been so brazenly violated. Lord Danzo suddenly intervened. I withdraw my proposal for Shino Aburame to be made an Anbu candidate, he said. The whole room was shocked. Even the elders didn't know what Danzo was thinking now. Lord Danzo added, instead, I recommend Sasuke Uchiha and Naruto Uzumaki as Anbu candidates. A tense silence followed once those names were dropped. The elders' mouths opened agape in shock, just as the Jonin shot Danzo dirty looks. Tsunade, however, eyed Danzo carefully and thought, so that's what you really wanted, Danzo. The door to the meeting room squeaked open. Sorry, I'm late, Kakashi excused. I've been preoccupied with one of my students and… He stopped mid-sentence as the room sat in a cold, brooding silence. He asked, is something wrong? The room erupted into an uproar. The Jonin vehemently opposed such a proposal, and the elders likewise reviled it. Meanwhile, Kakashi stood dumbfounded as to what he stepped into, whereas Tsunade and Danzo exchanged brief yet intense glares. He's been hustling this council to get the last Uchiha and the Jinchuriki, Tsunade believed. Hiashi and Shibi would agree just to appease him, and the Jonin would agree if pressed. They have their own to protect. Naruto and Sasuke are orphans, they don't have anyone with power protecting them. This old man is playing on our emotions to get his way. Tsunade's known Danzo since her childhood. Her sensei, the late third Hokage, had very little to say regarding the darkness of shinobi. He never spoke ill of him, but the lack of anything good to say said enough. And his behavior didn't endear him to her at all. When she first returned to Konoha, Tsunade made immediate inquiries as to Konoha's recent contact with Orochimaru. But the files she received from the Anbu and Danzo were heavily redacted. The Anbu reported it highly sensitive material and refused to release any more information. Danzo hid behind the cloak of the Fire Daimyo, whom threatened to rescind his support for her promotion to Hokage if she pressed the matter further. And when she did formally assume the office, Tsunade inquired into Itachi Uchiha and Akatsuki. At the time, the information could have proved useful as both Kakashi and Sasuke suffered comas after their encounters with the renegade. Luckily, she didn't need the information as after the inquiry was made a fire erupted in the village archives. All vital information regarding the clan killer was destroyed, and it had all the hallmarks of an Anbu operation. Now, she looked into Danzo's single eye. He's hiding something, and Tsunade would sooner resign as Hokage after beating the information out of him than let it go. But she has a village to protect and must play the game of politics to keep her grandfather's dream alive. She must salvage the situation before it's out of her control. Tsunade stood up. I second the proposal, but on one condition, she announced. But Miss Tsunade, Lady Kaharu started to protest. Tsunade slammed her fist on the desk, and everyone shut their mouths. The fifth informed her elderly colleague, as the Hokage, I reserve the right to review and support whatever proposal reaches me. Seeing Tsunade amenable to the proposal, Danzo leaned over the table. He's finally shown interest in this meeting. He began bargaining with the Hokage, and the rest of the village's elite were helpless to watch as the two pillars of Konohagakure negotiated. Danzo started, what are your terms, Lord Fifth? You've left out Sakura Haruno from your request, Tsunade stated, I want her added to the proposal. Oh? Danzo snorted, I don't recall Miss Haruno showing any particular skill or talent. Naruto Uzumaki nearly flunked out of the academy, and yet you personally recommended him as an Anbu candidate. Yes, but the boy has performed admirably in the Chunin exams. He not only defeated the one-tailed Shukaku during the Sand Invasion but has even earned your favor after your and Master Yirjia's encounter with Orochimaru. And those are just a couple of his extraordinary feats. Lord Fifth, we both know he wants to join the Anbu to realize his own goals. I don't see the harm in giving the boy a try. I never knew you were so generous, Lord Danzo, Tsunade pointed out. She wanted to see how he reacted to that underhanded insult. But Danzo brushed it off. Oh, not at all. The elderly shinobi leaned back in his chair, relaxing. He said, I merely wish to maintain the security of our village, and we need extraordinary shinobi in order to do so. I think Sakura Haruno deserves the chance, don't you? Danzo scoffed. She tied in the preliminaries of the Chunin exams with Ino Yamanaka and is supposedly an expert in genjutsu. But I've never read a report that backs up this point. And yet she also performed valiantly in the Forest of Death, Tsunade argued, and protected her comrades long enough for Asuma's team to come to their aid. I see potential. Well then, Danzo cleared his throat, when she's built up a record of feats that rivals the Uchiha prodigy and the late fourth son, I'll consider your request. Many in the room shifted uneasily hearing Danzo speak candidly. To be so blunt about Naruto's true lineage, when the Third ordered it be kept secret, seemed to be a final insult to the late Hiruzen. It's all or nothing, Danzo, Tsunade firmly said. Besides, I will personally train Sakura Haruno as my own student. Danzo smirked, amused, you would train the kunoichi? I never seen you take interest in the way of the shinobi after the last war ended. And yet here you are, doling out orders and taking up students like our once beloved third. Tsunade gambled, This council has selected me to lead and protect this village. That provides me with a certain latitude that must be respected. This negotiation of ours is done out of respect for your contributions to the village, Lord Danzo. But rest assured, I will train Sakura to stand shoulder to shoulder with Sasuke and Naruto. And they will become fine Anbu. Danzo tapped his fingers on the table, thinking. The rest of the council looked uneasily at each other. None of them expected such a tense encounter when they woke up this morning. Very well. Danzo broke the silence. He picked up his cane and pulled himself out of the chair. The old shinobi said, I formally amend my proposal to include all of Kakashi's team. But, Lord Fifth, don't expect this compromise to alter the traditions of the Anbu. She, along with Sasuke and Naruto, must pass the initiation or they all drop out. And if I find they failed due to her incompetence, then Sasuke and Naruto must retake the exam. And if they pass, they'll be Anbu without her. Agreed, Tsunade declared. Before the rest of the council or Kakashi had anything to add, the fifth Hokage promptly stamped 3 papers in cinnabar ink, and then again with a different stamp in black ink. Pasted across the surface of Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura's files in bright red was the kanji for Chunin promotion application rejected, and below pressed in black ink was the kanji for Anbu candidacy application approved. With nothing left to add, Danzo said his goodbyes. I will take my leave. And, Lord Fifth? Yes, Lord Danzo? Tsunade eagerly awaited his response. He smirked, have a happy Bon festival, and hobbled away on his cane. The rest of the council quickly filed out of the room, but Kakashi remained. He eyed Tsunade carefully, and the fifth knew he had something to say. As the door closed behind them, the only people left were Tsunade, Kakashi, and Tsunade's faithful servant, Shizune. Imagine my surprise to hear that all 3 of my genin pupils have been selected for Anbu candidacy, Kakashi started, and I didn't even have to lift a finger in their defense. You sound almost disappointed, Kakashi, Tsunade said. Well, I don't have anything good to say about Danzo. What do you mean? I used to be an Anbu. And with all due respect, Lady Tsunade, the Anbu is Danzo's domain. It's a dark world, and I can't really imagine Naruto and Sakura surviving that unscathed. Sasuke, maybe, but the darkness would consume them all one way or another if Danzo got his way. That may be so, Tsunade sighed, but all I could really do was keep it on my terms. I could tell he was about to twist the clan elders' wrists for their own prodigies. At first, he proposed to take Neji Hyuga and Shino Aburame. It was a shot across the bow. Nobody saw it at first, but after he dropped Naruto and Sasuke's names, I knew where his real goals lied. He'd manipulate the Jonin and elders to turn them against me, and I could only sit there and watch. She sighed disgusted and muttered under her breath, why didn't Hiruzen get rid of him when he was in charge? Even the third played a dangerous game with Danzo, Kakashi started, they were comrades in the Second War. Danzo was even the third's right-hand man for many years. But as their careers took different paths, I suppose the friendship faded into memory. And after the Uchiha clan massacre, well, never mind. Tsunade's ears perked, if you know something, I could order it out of you. I don't want to spread rumors. Kakashi, Tsunade warned. The Jonin sighed, I only witnessed the aftermath of that massacre. So many bodies, such senseless brutality. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, and I didn't hear much but. Kakashi averted her gaze, and that surprised Tsunade. He choked on his own words, as if the walls had ears, they argued, heatedly. And the third ordered something called the Root, dissolved. Root, I only heard rumors of such an organization existing. They're dead ninja walking, or so they say in the Anbu. They do the wet work that even Anbu wouldn't touch. I thought at the time the third was angry because Danzo's Root failed to stop the massacre. But with what happened here and what's going on with Naruto, it makes me wonder. Naruto? Tsunade asked. I was going to tell you after the meeting. But then I discovered my team was selected for Anbu training. Kakashi sighed. It seems the late Shisui Uchiha speaks from the grave. Tsunade raised an eyebrow. She's heard of Shisui the teleporter, an Uchiha that wielded a short blade and fought with unrivaled skill. He died mysteriously some days before the Uchiha clan massacre. The files on him were rather scant on the details. But Tsunade didn't look into the matter too closely. Itachi and Orochimaru were her primary concern ever since she took office. What does he have to do with this, Kakashi? Tsunade asked. The late third had Shisui mentor a young orphan that was hated by the village. The two became close, like brothers, in fact. And now the young orphan has grown into a shinobi that's recently inherited a priceless gift from him. Tsunade leaned close to Kakashi. She almost whispered, Naruto's the shinobi you're talking about, isn't it? Kakashi nodded. Shisui left Naruto his summoning animal, and if the boy can convince it to help him he'd receive the fourth's power. Tsunade remained calm, but Shizune cocked her head, puzzled. Power? She naively asked. Tsunade turned to her companion, and explained, the fourth Hokage was known as Konoha's Yellow Flash in the last war. His speed was unmatched, even to this day. And it was all thanks to my granduncle's jutsu, the Flying Thunder God technique. The summoning animal appears to contain a scroll that teaches the jutsu, Kakashi said. I'd be lying if I said I wouldn't be worried if Naruto got his hands on it. What's wrong with learning the technique? Shizune asked. Tsunade grimaced, clearly disturbed just thinking of it. There's a reason why it's considered a forbidden jutsu and only used by the Hokage's guard. Even in the guard, they'd never risk doing it on their own. All three of them need to be linked to even perform it. Why? Because the Flying Thunder God technique is extremely dangerous to even attempt. If Naruto's not careful, he'll disappear. Disappear? You mean die? Shizune raised an eyebrow. It seemed like an unusual choice of words. No, Kakashi grimly said, if the technique isn't performed properly, you're torn from existence. I expect you want me to stop the summoning animal before Naruto gets his hands on it, Lord Fifth? The Hokage thought it over briefly. If he manages to get the scroll, Tsunade said, he can keep it. Lady Tsunade, Shizune exclaimed. How could she play fast and lose with Naruto's life? Especially after everything he's done to get Tsunade to come back to the village. I know he can learn it, Tsunade simply said. She remembered the bet the Senju had with the Loud Ninja. If he learned the fourth's other signature jutsu, the Rasengan, in 3 days, he'll get her grandfather's precious necklace. But if he couldn't, then he'd give up his dream of ever being Hokage. 3 days later, Naruto came to Tsunade's aid and used that very jutsu to send Orochimaru's underlings spiraling through the air. If he could learn that jutsu in such a short amount of time, then there's no limit to his ability. You've given me a lot to think about, Kakashi, Tsunade said. I guess my lonesome nights sipping sake are over. I'll be too busy cleaning up what the old man left behind. Kakashi stood silent. I'm sensing you have something else you want to get off your chest? Tsunade asked. I know whatever happens between you and Danzo is above my pay grade but, Kakashi said, how would putting Sakura in his Anbu benefit you? That'll be between me and Sakura, I'm afraid, Tsunade shrugged, but to ease your concerns, I don't think I need to remind you what my teacher and yours did to test us and our teams. Kakashi nodded silently. He remembered the bell test, and its lesson that teamwork and friendship are what's most important for all shinobi to keep in mind. It was a bitter pill to swallow now. He had to trust his students will find strength in each other, and survive the hardships they face together. With nothing left to add, Kakashi bowed to his Hokage and exited the conference room. Eventually, Yada the Raven grew tired of his search and rested at the top of a pine tree. He mumbled, Shisui, this isn't funny anymore. You're getting me worried. Yada thought back to the last time he saw Shisui. Things were dire in the village, according to the Uchiha. And he needed to stow Yada away until things blew over. Yada sensed something amiss and pressed his pupil for more details. But Shisui didn't want to involve him. Probably because he knew Yada would stay by his side through it all, and risk his own life in the process. So instead of telling his faithful raven, Shisui gave Yada a toothy grin, a thumbs up, and said, don't worry, it's nothing I can't handle. But that only made the old raven worry more. Now, Yada sighed. Shisui's last words echoed in Yada's head. Just for safekeeping, the Uchiha said as he clasped a forbidden scroll shut in the bird's leather harness. And when Shisui tied a scrap of paper to his leg, Yada asked what it was. Shisui winked and teasingly said, this? Oh, it's nothing, Yada. Just a letter I've been writing for somebody. It's nothing serious, I just don't want anyone to read it just yet. Yada grumbled. He didn't like it when Shisui kept things from him. But his summoner had a way of easing the bird's worries. When you're summoned again, you'll understand, he'd say. Since Yada's been Shisui's faithful summoning animal since he was a genin, Yada trusted Shisui and didn't ask much of it. And Yada figured it would have been just a day, a week at most. But 5 years passed, and Shisui never summoned him. It wasn't like Yada could fly to the Hidden Leaf and check up on Shisui. His home lied far beyond the known shinobi world. Across a large sea, in fact. That's why when the blonde ninja summoned him, Yada hoped to see Shisui's grin on the other side. But deep down, he knew Shisui would never summon him again. "Hey, bird brain," an obnoxious voice called out from the ground. Yada pointed his beak at the ground, and noticed that bright, orange jumpsuit. He sighed in disgust. "Go away, boy. Get down here. Tell me how you know Shisui," the boy demanded. Yada shook his head, frustrated. "None of your business, buzz off." That made the ninja angry. He gathered chakra at the bottom of his feet and sprinted up the tree trunk. The boy's speed caught Yada off guard, and he barely had time to jump to an adjacent pine tree just as the ninja grasped at his tail feathers. "Get back here, you stupid crow," the ninja demanded as he swung uneasily to and fro on the tree. "I'm not a crow," Yada angrily retorted. "I'm a raven, there's a difference." "Yeah, whatever," the ninja dismissively said. "Look, Shisui and I were pretty close. I was like a kid brother to him. And you know something about him, so that makes it my business." "You were close to Shisui?" Yada snorted. "I was his summoning animal. Nobody was closer to him than me. I know everything about him." "Yeah? Then why'd he leave the village in such a hurry that one night?" Yada nearly choked. He didn't know. "If you're his summoning animal, where were you?" the blonde ninja snarled. "Shisui's face was all bloody when I last saw him. I thought you animals go through thick and thin with this ninja. Where were you when that happened?" And when Yada remained silent, the ninja snapped, "Some summoning animal you are." The raven averted his gaze. He didn't want to admit his own ignorance about Shisui's demise. The following silence angered the ninja. But before he let out more scathing remarks, a kunoichi with pink hair hollered up to him from below. "Naruto," she cried out, "what are you doing up there? Everything all right?" The ninja looked down. "Oh, Sakura," the blonde briefly glared at Yada and mumbled, "Forget you then," under his breath. He climbed back down to greet the kunoichi. Curious, Yada stealthily hopped down a few branches, and eavesdropped on their conversation. "Yeah, sorry about that," Naruto scratched the back of his head. "I was just chasing some dumb bird." "Ah, okay?" Sakura seemed confused but didn't ask further. Instead she grinned. "Guess what? The Chunin Promotion Council's finished meeting. The results are out." "Whoa, they are?" Naruto exclaimed. "What did they say?" Sakura started. "Out of everyone in our class, only Shikamaru was promoted to Chunin." "Oh," Naruto frowned. "And out of everyone in our class," Sakura grinned from ear to ear, "our whole team has been chosen to be Anbu." Naruto shouted, "Yes," and jumped high up in the air as Sakura giggled. They practically danced in place with excitement. "And you know something else? Lady Tsunade approached me to be her student." "What, really? That's awesome, Sakura." "Yeah, no. I know, right? What made her pick you though?" Sakura grimaced. "What do you mean by that?" "Eh? No, nothing." Naruto sweated. "I mean you must be pretty special for her to notice you is all." "Oh." Sakura smiled, and lightly tapped Naruto on the nose. "Well, to answer your question, she said something along the lines of I ought to look out for you and Sasuke." "That doesn't really answer my question." Sakura smiled warmly, but didn't say anything more on the matter. Instead, she told Naruto, "Tonight's the Bon Festival, and our whole class is gonna celebrate for our and Shikamaru's promotion. You want to come?" Naruto snickered. "Really? Like me and you on a date?" Sakura rolled her eyes. "No, silly. Everyone will be there too. We're having a barbecue. You should come." "What time would it be at?" Naruto asked. 4 o'clock. "Oh." Naruto frowned. "Then I can't go." "What? It's a barbecue. We rarely get to hang out with the others." "Yeah, but I got this thing I need to do," Naruto solemnly said. Sakura furrowed her brows. "But it's the Bon Festival. Everyone's off duty." "Well, for me it's Tomb Sweeping Day." "Tomb Sweeping Day? What's that supposed to be?" "Everyone I know just does the Bon Festival." Yada the Raven eyed Naruto carefully, thinking, is this kid an Uchiha? That's something only the clan knows about. "Well, you clean up a few tombs and pay your respects, y'all, no?" "So kind of like the Bon Festival, only a lot more boring." Naruto waved his hand, and feigned ignorance of its significance. "You sure?" Asuma-sensei's even footing the bill. I figured you wouldn't pass up a free meal like that. It's fine. Really, Sakura. Tell everyone I said hi. Sakura shrugged. Alright. Happy tomb sweeping day, I guess, and walked away. Naruto waved back, grinning. But as soon as Sakura disappeared from view, he frowned. The blonde stared at the ground for a few seconds, as if running something through his mind over and over again. And then he started to walk away. Then, Yata called out from a nearby tree branch, "Boy." "Boy, huh?" Naruto looked up to Yata. "What do you want?" "Tomb sweeping day, isn't that supposed to be in spring?" "It's fall." Naruto nodded. "Yeah, it is. But I have a teammate that hates it when outsiders intrude on the Uchiha clan's cemetery, especially me. I usually sneak in during the Bon festival to pay my respects though. Besides, there's a lot of dead leaves cluttering up the tomb this time of the year. I can't stand to see his name covered up under rotten leaves." "Whose name?" "Shisui's." Naruto sighed, "But it's an empty grave. They never found his body," and walked away. Yata blinked, stunned. To hear that Shisui had a tomb seemed surreal. Shisui was Yata's most promising student. He could have rivaled his previous summoner, Kagami Uchiha, if Shisui were allowed to mature. Just as Naruto disappeared from sight, Yata leapt from his tree branch and flew in Naruto's direction. Once he spotted Naruto's orange jumpsuit and short sword strapped to his back, Yata called out, "Boy. What's your name?" and landed right on his shoulder. Naruto was taken aback at first, and nearly recoiled in shock as Yata folded in his feathered wings. But once Yata dug his claws into Naruto's jumpsuit, the ninja hesitantly answered, "Naruto Uzumaki." "Uzumaki, eh? Why's a non-Uchiha cleaning an Uchiha's tomb? I don't see how that's any of your business." "TCH, Yata sounded, giving me a taste of my own medicine, huh?" Naruto shrugged, and kept walking. He barely felt Yata's weight on his shoulder. Yata sighed, "Look, kid. Sorry if I pecked you the wrong way. I had a strong bond with Shisui, and well, do you know what it's like waiting 5 years hoping what you feared happened didn't happen?" "Yeah, actually I do," Naruto bluntly said. "Shisui was your friend too?" "More than that." Naruto suddenly stopped, and turned to eye Yata carefully. "He was my big brother." Yata noticed the resolve in Naruto's eyes. The raven thought back to Shisui. He mentioned taking care of a small orphan boy occasionally. But they never spoke about each other's personal lives too much. It was an unspoken rule between them not to pry. But now, Yata spoke freely about his late summoner, and asked, "Why isn't Shisui's relatives taking care of his tomb?" "You've been away a lot longer than you realize," Naruto started. And as the two walked off to the Uchiha clan cemetery, the Uzumaki told Yata the fate of his former summoner's clan. "This is worse than I feared," Yata remarked. He remained perched on Naruto's shoulder, and looked over hundreds of tombstones. Most of them had the same date of death carved into the stone. The sun bleached the tablets over the years, and the cobbled ground was littered with piles of colorful leaves and mud. The air tasted stale and damp. No one's visited this place for some time. Naruto quietly walked down the main passageway in the cemetery. He carried a brush and a bar of green soap in one hand, and a pail full of fresh water in another. Yata looked around the faceless names, and spotted a few of the Uchiha he personally knew. It was a strange feeling. To think that a proud clan dwelled some 6 feet under mud and rock. When the two arrived at Shisui's tomb, Yata felt his heart shoot up into his gullet. It felt wrong to see the kanji for Shisui's name carved into stone. He hopped onto the stony floor, and eyed the date of death. It was a few days earlier than the rest. The raven wanted to ask Naruto about it, but the boy suddenly dropped his brush and pail, and turned back around. Yata figured he'd be back, and watched as the ninja quietly walked amongst the bleached tombstones to a wooden shed at the edge of the cemetery. He produced a keychain, which jingled as he inserted the right key, and entered. Yata hopped up to an adjacent stone tablet, and gazed upon the small town of bleached tombstones. It was eerily silent. Yata sighed. He remembered what it was like when Shisui visited his own ancestors' graves. Tomb sweeping day wasn't necessarily a joyous time, but certainly more lively than this. Relatives adorned their ancestors' tombs with colorful flowers, and tie red ribbons around the tablets. Many offered fresh fruit and alcohol to their deceased loved ones. Yada fondly remembered how the smoke from sticks of incense and burning spirit money curled up into the sky. Sometimes the wind carried the scent and ash around the entire village. To see this place so abandoned and unkempt brought tears to the raven's small black eyes. Naruto made numerous trips back and forth to Shisui's tomb. In the end, he brought a host of items: a red brazier, a ceramic bowl and cup with the Uchiha crest painted around the rim, a bottle of sake, thin sticks of incense, a fat stack of banknotes painted in red with the calligraphy for 9 gold, and a plastic bag full of oranges. Once each of these items rested by Shisui's tomb, Naruto started scrubbing down Shisui's tomb. Yada asked him questions, general ones and mostly about the cemetery. He avoided asking anything too personal at first. Naruto quietly replied, and tried not to make too much noise. He welcomed the distraction, nonetheless. According to the ninja, this cemetery used to be visited by many villagers. Mostly old friends of the deceased that weren't Uchihas themselves. They'd pay an elderly man as a caretaker of sorts for the grounds. But as time went on, the friends either died or gradually forgot about the Uchiha altogether. In the end, only 2 visited the Uchiha cemetery, Naruto and Sasuke. Out of their own pockets, they'd pay the groundskeeper as much as they could. But eventually, the man grew too old to care for the grounds. Now, the elderly man just makes short treks to a nearby temple to buy the essentials. These essentials composed of the items Naruto brought from the wooden shed. Meanwhile, Naruto and Sasuke cleaned and maintained the grounds. But Sasuke mostly cared for the cemetery throughout the year. When Naruto finished washing the stone tablet, Yada asked why mostly Sasuke. Naruto dumped his pail of water onto the stone to rinse off the suds, and replied, he considers it his turf. That doesn't seem fair, Yada remarked. Naruto shrugged, it's why I don't visit Shisui during the real tomb sweeping day. I only visit during the Bon festival to clean up the tomb, and on a few other days I know Sasuke would be busy brooding in his apartment or training. HMPH, Yada sounded, he sounds like a brat. Naruto softly chuckled, and sounded in agreement. Then, Naruto rested the palm of his hand on the stone tablet carrying Shisui's name. He felt the warm stone emit heat it absorbed from the sun that whole day. Naruto admitted, but Sasuke deserves to be here. What do you mean? Yada asked, as he hopped down from the adjacent tablet and used his beak to drag out the yellow banknotes. When the real tomb sweeping day comes around, Naruto started, he cleans up the whole cemetery. Yada choked. All this? Even the older ones dating back to Madara Uchiha's time? Naruto simply nodded. You'd think he'd ask for help. He couldn't possibly do it all in one day and pay each and every Uchiha respect. I watched him do just that, Naruto said. When you're as disciplined as him, nothing's impossible. But why? Yada asked. Before he chased me off the grounds, Naruto started, and bent down to pick up the ceramic bowl. He told me he had to constantly wash out the stain of his brother's sins. Itachi, Yada remarked. He remembered that Uchiha Itachi was Shisui's best friend, another kid brother, in Shisui's eyes. Something didn't seem right about the story Naruto told him. If Itachi really did massacre the clan, he certainly wouldn't do it with selfish intentions in mind. But Yada didn't bring this up. It was Shisui's day, after all. Naruto merely hummed in acknowledgement. He firmly planted a few oranges into the bowl, and poured a generous portion of clear alcohol into the cup. Naruto placed these in front of the shrine, an offering to Shisui for him to savor. Then, Naruto crept up to a small stone receptacle on the ground near the tablet. He pulled out the blackened, used sticks of incense from Sasuke's tomb sweeping day in spring to put new ones in. Just as Naruto brought out a lighter to burn the fresh sticks, Yada interrupted him. You're not going to light those with some lighter, are you? Yada pointed out. How else would I light them? Naruto asked. Uchiha clansmen traditionally use fire jutsu to burn things. That's the whole point of the fireball jutsu. Before it became that flashy ball of fire you'd hurl at enemies, it was a rite of passage to let you commemorate the dead. The Uchiha clans got a strange idea of living, Naruto remarked. Shisui tried to explain it to me. Why everything they do or celebrate reminds them of mortality and death, but I never really understood it, Naruto sighed. I guess I'd have to be an Uchiha to understand. It keeps them humble, Yada replied. Naruto raised an eyebrow as Yata continued. Shisui was different, but most Uchiha get two for their own good, and end up hurting more people along the way. That's why they developed all these special rituals and such that other village people don't do. But they're still people, y'all. No, Naruto started, like me and Kakashi-sensei and Sakura. Not with their Sharingan they aren't. Yata cryptically replied. What do you mean? Nothing. Forget I said anything. Yata dropped, and started. Why don't you use fire jutsu to do this? Shisui taught me the fireball technique, but my chakra control isn't good, Naruto admitted. I'd cook up the entire cemetery if I tried. Shisui may have taught me a lot, but I was always better with wind release techniques. Yata was surprised at first, but thought, you've got a good head on your shoulders, kid. You just need someone to point you in the right direction, that's all. The raven hopped up to Naruto's left foot. I can do it then, he cawed. Naruto furrowed his brow. A raven can do fire jutsu? Since when? Hey, Yata softly chuckled. Ravens are masters in fire jutsu, you know. Some myths say that's why we're colored black. We use fire jutsu so much we burnt our feathers black and charred the skin underneath. I mean, if you can do it, then here, and Naruto lowered 3 sticks of incense near Yata's beak. Don't worry, I'll make it small, Yata said, and hollered, fire style. Fireball jutsu. A small flame erupted from the raven's beak and singed the tops of the incense sticks until they glowed a hot red. Naruto smirked. Well, you're full of surprises, aren't you? Yata jutted out his black, feathered chest with pride. Then, Yata watched as Naruto stood up and walked a respectable distance away from Shisui's tomb. And he turned to face the stone tablet and bowed 3 times. The ninja cradled the sticks of incense in both hands in the meantime. After which, he gently placed them in the receptacle by the tomb's side. Then, Yata used his fire jutsu again. This time into the brazier. As the coals smoldered at the bottom of the iron basin, Naruto folded yellow banknotes and placed a few atop the coals. As the banknotes were set aflame, Naruto carefully tossed a few more in until bits of ash flew high up into the air. Naruto softly chuckled. He admitted that he hoped that the spirit money would reach Shisui. That he'd grin excitedly, run to a ramen stand in the afterlife, and buy the biggest bowl of ghost ramen he could get his hands on. And hopefully, it'll last him until the next time Naruto visited. Yata looked up to the boy, who stared at the flames of the brazier in the meantime. For a brief moment, as the flames lit up Naruto's eyes, Yata thought he saw Shisui. And Yata hoped that this was all an elaborate genjutsu. Shisui was known for his twisted sense of humor, after all. But as the stars shined up in the sky, and Naruto's spiky, yellow hair stayed yellow, Yata finally accepted that Shisui wasn't coming back. The raven suddenly flew up to Naruto's shoulder. The ninja grinned. Comfy? Yes, very, Yata simply said, and then he cleared his gullet. Naruto, there's something I want to tell you. Naruto raised an eyebrow, curious. In front of my late summoner, the raven proudly declared, I, Yata the raven, vowed to take you under my wing and guide you down the beaten path. Naruto scratched his cheek and softly laughed. Thanks I guess. I mean, you're nice and all, but what can you do? The raven croaked, a lot of things. But today, I am a humble messenger, bearing a gift from our late Uchiha. He twisted his head around and unclasped the leather harness. Shisui's words echoed in Yata's mind. The raven recalled the last moment he'd ever see his summoner. You'll know what to do with this. The words echoed. Even when I'm not here, I'm sure you'll keep it from falling into the wrong hands. Yata dragged out the precious white scroll, and plopped it in Naruto's hands. Naruto broke the seal on the scroll, and gently unfurled it. He read aloud the inked kanji beside the fire as it roared in the red brazier. Hiraishin no jutsu. Yes, Yata nodded, the flying thunder god technique. The late 4th Hokage's signature jutsu, and the one technique Shisui longed to master but could not. The 4th signature jutsu. Naruto felt a tinge of excitement. If he could master that, then Naruto would be one step closer to his dream of becoming Hokage. He quickly rolled the scroll back up, and stowed it in one of his pockets. Yata croaked, confused, you don't want it? No, I do. Naruto softly spoke. He turned to meet Shisui's tombstone, but I'll read it tomorrow. Tonight, I just want to pay my respects. And suddenly the fireworks from the Bon Festival burst in the purpled sky. Colors of red, white, pink, and blue flowered in the starry night sky. They sizzled and sparkled away like newborn stars, and faded away just as fast. Naruto and Yata stood by the brazier that night, warmed up by the fire and the smoldering coals in the brazier. And they left when it felt like the right time to leave their Uchiha to rest in peace. That's all for now. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments.